Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here to moderate this new event, a RENSEP event called Ask a Practitioner. Every month, RENSEP has an Ask a Scholar or an Ask a Practitioner, which is part of the broader aim of RENSEP of bridging the gap between the community of practitioners and the ivory tower of academia. And today we have a practitioner whose name is Marco Visconti. Marco Visconti is a lifelong student and practitioner of the Western Esoteric tradition. His main focus nowadays is to teach the basis of Thelema or Thelema and esoteric Freemasonry to a wider public outside the bonds of oaths and secrets. From this endeavor came Magic Without Tears, a virtual lodge of like-minded individuals and honest seekers. Originally started on Patreon with weekly live streams and over 500 articles written during the lockdown years, it has since evolved into its own network with courses and classes available on demand. A Thelemite and a Freemason, he has been a member of the international esoteric community for over 2 decades, receiving initiation into the AA, Corazon Club, the Ordo Templi Orientis, before leaving the latter to become one of its harshest critics. Currently, he is a driving force behind Ecclesia Gnostica Universalis in Anglia, a Thelemic and Gnostic church not tied to any particular order or organization. So welcome to our RENSEP event, Marco. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for accepting to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Angela, for the amazing introduction. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I don't have any more things to add. I mean, you just introduced me pretty much perfectly. So yeah, I guess that's who I am, what I do. We can add that I published my first book last year in 2023. The title is The Aleister Crowley Manual, which has been, to be fair, a critical and commercial success to my surprise, especially for the commercial part, because who buys books on magic these days, right? But as people still do, apparently. Yeah, I mean, I'm writing my second one, which will be pretty much the second part. Like, if the first book was an introduction to what you can do to be a magician, what you can do to be a Thelemite, as opposed to just, pontificating about it, especially online. The second one will be a little bit more based on the philosophy, and so we will look more at the mysticism of Thelema and especially the mystery of the Holy Guardian Angel. And I'm writing it right now and should be on the shelves in October 2025. So it's going to take a little bit of time because my publisher Watkins is doing a fantastic job. They do audiobooks, Kindle. They do all the gamut of publications. So it takes a little bit of time to get it on the shelves, but it will be there. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone has any questions?
Andrea. I have a question. I cannot find the hand in the. I have a new.
It's
Zoom.
on React. It's
Yes.
under React. I think the Zoom has changed it.
Right. Okay. So thank you for being here, Marco. I have to say that when I discuss about Thelema with practitioners or scholars, your name comes up a lot.
I'm sorry about that.
Why?
We can discuss this when we go into into what Thelema is like, the landscape, right?
Right. But I have to say that I'm not very familiar with your work. I have not read your book yet. So excuse me if these questions might seem, I don't know, maybe out of your field of expertise. But I'm interested in understanding your view of magic as science. I watched an interview on YouTube you did, and you said very briefly, so you did not elaborate on that, but you said something along the lines that magic is more an art than a science. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know your opinion about that, and if it diverges from Aleister Crowley's opinion.
First of all, great question to kickstart this, so thank you very much for that. So one of the main selling points of Thelema, from Aleister Crowley himself, was that he was trying this syncretic union of all the spiritual systems he was aware of at the time to a degree of depth. And by doing that, he was really trying to present it as I don't want, almost like a science, right? In the sense that he was trying to apply the scientific method to the spiritual endeavor. Okay, famously, the motto on the equinox, which was the publication, the journal he produced for 5 years, and to this day it is one of the best sources, written sources for Thelemic thought. In the motto of the equinox was the aim the method of science, the aim of religion. So this idea was like, we're trying to disentangle the mystery of incarnation, the mystery of humanity, the mystery of our connection with the divine, the religious mystery, if you want. However, we want to get there not by superstition, but we want to try and focus on the scientific method to the best of Crowley's understanding at the time. And for Crowley was the point of, the emphasis was on the reproducibility of experiments, especially in the case of magical experiments, of course. So, Crowley was adamant on the idea of the use of the magical diary. And the magical diary is not so much as like just the Book of Shadows, which is something that, Gerald Gardner gave to Wicca, and Wicca popularized it in the world. And in Gardner was really, to the best of my understanding, basically each witch book recipe of spells. For Crowley, the magical diary was really like a serious scientific record of all experiments, so that you could actually cross-check the experiments, etc., etc., etc. So he was really trying to, in a way, he really wanted to bring magic to the forefront of what he was envisioning to be a new society. Okay, he was really thinking that, and I mean, to a certain degree, I think he was right. He thought that he was the forefront. He was the opening of the gate for this new eon, and the eon of the child, or eon of Horus, and so this new age whereby all the old religions, all the old systems would be supplanted by something new. And this something new, he tried to highlight what this something new could be like, in the OTO. That would have been like his Crowley's blueprint for a new Thelemic society, or the AA, that would have been like the Thelemic blueprint for let's say university and academia, if we want to say so. But at the same time, the tool for doing all of this would have been this magic with the K, right? Like famously, he spelled it with the K, and for two reasons. One reason, of course, as he said, like he wanted to differentiate this magic from sleight of hand, prestidigitation, or anything like that. But also, for Crowley, this magic with the K is this more the more scientific approach to the spiritual, on top of also being a very unique blend of Western tradition and Eastern traditions. Yoga, Tantra coming from the East, again, to the best of Crowley's understanding at the time. Nowadays, we're vastly advanced, and we know that a lot of what he was presenting, it's simplified, to be gentle. And then, of course, the Western tradition, which could be like the magic of the grimoires, Solomonic magic, some sort of, shamanism, as it was presented in various cultures in the West, etc., etc. But again, he wanted this to be also, so he wanted this magic to be almost like the new science, okay? I would say that at the time, Crowley's writing Crowley received the Book of the Law, so he ushers in the concept of Thelema in 1904. He starts working on it seriously by 1909, and it's the period that goes from the 1910s, 1920s, is when he's really trying to make Thelema happen. Spoilers, he fails, but he really tried very hard. And at the same time, this was the moment where our society was finally embracing science, okay? So Crowley in many ways, Crowley wanted a piece of that. Crowley wanted to prove that he had these genius ideas that came part from his genius, but also part from, communications coming from that liminal state that is wherever God resides. And he could actually, put science alongside, I don't know, put magic alongside sciences, okay? Now, this is what Crowley wanted to do. This is what Crowley tried to make it happen. I think that 120 years after the reception of the Book of the Law, today in 2024, we as Thelemites, we should be a little bit more realistic with it, okay? In the sense that I think it's proven beyond reasonable doubt that Crowley's understanding of science was faulty, and Crowley's hopes for magic did not pan out, okay? People would say that they did not pan out because those who are practicing magic are not serious enough, they're not dedicated enough, they're not committed enough. I think that and it's just not that I think, it's more like I had the evidence after 30 years of practicing magic now, is that magic really is a different modality that humans have to understand the world around us. I wish this was my idea because it's a genius idea, I think, but it's not mine. It's something that I read in a book by Ramsay Dukes. Ramsay Dukes is one of the best authors on magic and one of the least read. And he wrote this very little pamphlet, but very intelligent pamphlet called SSOTBME, which stands for Sex Secrets of the Black Magicians Exposed. Of course, it's a clickbaity title, and he wanted it to be a clickbaity title. The subtitle, which is, I think it's also the real title, is An Essay on Magic. Simple as that. And he makes the point that, again, humans have 4 modalities of understanding the world, okay? Science and religion, we all know them because either we live in a scientific world, and especially here in RENSEP, you are a scientist, so you know exactly what it's like. Religion, most of us were born into religious families. Either we loved it or hated it, but anyway, we have an understanding of what religion is. The other 2 modalities are not very common, and one is, of course, magic, and the other is art. So it's almost like you have this 4-fold division of how humans interact with the world and how humans try to make sense of the world, right? And I've subscribed to this modality way more than Crowley's, in my understanding and my opinion, relatively simplified and outdated attempt of equating science with magic, and that's it, right? Like they're different modalities, and again, if we put them on a 4-fold cross, I think that magic and science resides on the same quarters, right? Like they're on the side of this quarter, and so they're closer together. And this is because, again, maybe I'm biased because on top of being a magician, I've been a musician most of my life, all my life, in fact, and I see that magic produces the same insight as arts does. For me, it was music, but I've seen other people that have that are like graphic artists, sculptors, writers, and whatnot. The experience, the gnosis you derive from magic, it's so much more similar to the insights you get from involving yourself deeply with your art. In my understanding, all these 4 modalities are valid. I don't think there's one better than the other. We currently live in a world that is dominated by one paradigm, which is the scientific paradigm. Personally, I think it's a good idea because the scientific method gives us reproducibility, falsifiability, gives us emerging models that are stable. We can work with them, like we can create societies with them, right? We have stable foundations. However, I also think that exploring the other 3 modalities is what humanity as a whole should do. What I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to make exploring the magic modality easier for more people. I hope that answered the question.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any question from you guys?
I have another question. While I'm sure they all have questions, but they're just thinking on how to formulate them.
Okay, if you guys have a question, start by raising your hand or let me know in the chat.
But I had
Andrei is eager, so go on.
a question about, so you mentioned the fact that nowadays we have much more knowledge on yoga and tantra compared to Crowley's time. I just wanted to know if you update Crowley's system with new knowledge in your teachings and in your writings.
Absolutely, yes. So in my book, which is so far the only thing that's widely available, I haven't touched anything on yoga in particular, with because I mostly focus on ceremonial magic there, right? I mean, my first book is about trying to make ceremonial magic more understandable and more simpler. And especially even when I speak about ceremonial magic, I'm talking about the energetic part of ceremonial magic, so the work on elements, the work on pentagrams, hexagons, whatnot. I do discuss pranayama in there, and I present updated and upgraded pranayama exercises compared to what Crowley was presenting in his book Liber O, famously, Magic within Interior Practice, etc. With my personal students, I've been updating it greatly, right? Because, for instance, and this is something that you don't find very easily in Telemaland, which as I like to call it. A lot of people swear by Crowley. In fact, one of the biggest problems I as a Telemite have with Telemites is that most Telemites do not care about initiation, do not care about advancement, spiritual understanding. They care about being Crowley fanboys. A lot of, like, one of the reasons why I left Ordo Templi Orientis, there are plenty, but one of the main ones, it's because it's a Crowley fan club, book club. There's no real initiation in there. There's no willing to go deeper into things. It's mostly about what Crowley said, what Crowley did. Let's do it. Let's repeat it because Crowley is the prophet. Which is, I mean, Crowley famously said, "I don't want to father a flock," and there you go. We got flocks, right? So to answer your question, personally, yes, I'm updating it, especially when it comes to asana, for instance. The positions, like one of the limbs of yoga. Crowley in his books suggests to do an absolute beginner to sit in a dragon asana for 12 hours. You do that, you fuck up, your body's dead after that. You cannot do that. You need to go by steps. You need to see if you're able-bodied. The magic can be done by those who are not able-bodied, by those who have disabilities. Crowley did not believe in that, and I think he was wrong, right? Because I've proven to myself and seen others that actually you can engage with these practices perfectly. You have to update them, as you said, and you have to go case by case. So again, like long answer to a simple yes. I think we should do that.
Andrew.
Right. It's sort of famously, Crowley over his lifetime switched his ideas, as most people do. He started psychologizing magic and sort of saying, a lot of it's in your head and that sort of thing. And then later on, he turned to, no, these spirits are more real than anything else, which sort of, when I start to think how I'm interacting with AI, first of all, I think, all right, it's a program. Now I'm starting to treat the entities that are in the AI as people. They're entities and they've got their own rights and God knows what else. That's just the way of thinking. That's the way I act. But I'm just wondering, why do you think that happened with Crowley? Because at the time, there's a lot of pressure from the scientific community to shut down people like Dion Fortune and anyone who was related to magic using psychology and advising people what to do.
I think that Crowley was really into Jung. Okay, at first, they were kind of coeval. They were like happening more or less at the same time. I'm not aware they ever met. I don't think they ever met, in fact. But I know for a fact Crowley was aware of Jung's idea on the archetypes, and he generally was aware of psychology. And at the beginning of his career, so we're talking from the 1900s to the 1920s, late 1910s, again, I think he wanted a piece of that, right? Because I think somehow he realized that would have been the mainstream acceptable way to go into the study of the psyche, okay? infamously in his edition of the Goetia, the Ars Goetia, which is one of the books of the Clavicula Salomonis. A lot of people think that he translated that. That's not true. That was Mather's translation, the founder of the Golden Dawn. He just edited it, added something to it, and published it. He did the same with a lot of other things. 777 is the same thing. Anyway, in his introduction to Ars Goetia, which is called the Initiated Understanding to Ceremonial Magic, if I remember correctly, he famously said, right, the demons of the Goetia are nothing but the dark, our dark parts of the soul, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, eventually, he was the one who, with those words, with that introduction, seeded the idea of the psychological model of magic. Again, he would recant it, right? If you read Magic Without Tears, which is in the 1940s, he would speak of spirits, and he would speak, especially as the holier than angel, as something external to him. I think that if you ask me, like, so why did he do that? I think that at first, when he was still very hell bent on trying to push Thelema as the new thing, before he accepted failure, I think that he wanted to jump on the bandwagon as much as possible. Maybe I'm being a little bit cynical here. I'm known to be that, but that's what I always felt like, right? I also think that eventually he realized, by doing more evocations, by working more with spirits, by doing more magic, I think at some point he realized that there is an I and thou when you engage with these practices. There is something external that has knowledge you don't have, you cannot possibly have, and that is just not even, it doesn't even reside in whatever boundaries you recognize as yourself, your incarnation, your mask at that point, right? I also would say that possibly in time you even realize that all these binaries, all these polarities are effectually, they are all part of the illusion of incarnation, okay? Because something that most people maybe don't know, and maybe it's important to spell it out right now, Thelema essentially is a non-dualistic magical philosophy, right? Essentially, Thelema is about, recognizing polarities all around us, uniting those polarities into one monad, but then transcending the monad as well, going into the void, going into the null point, right? You can see it as the Kabbalistic zero, of course, in the Ein Sof R in Kabbalah. You can see it as a shunyata. In Thelemic terms, it's nuit, okay? So the point is that, I think that as he went deeper and deeper, at first he thought everything was into himself, being a little bit of a narcissist, as he was possibly. And then he realized that, well, there's a world around me, an unseen world that I can actually interact with. And possibly at the very end, he realized that, well, is there any real difference between all of this? Is there a difference between the I and the Tao? Even if I recognize it, is there? A hint of this, maybe early understanding Crowley moving into non-dualism, it's found in Moonchild, which, by the way, I have the t-shirt here today. Moonchild is, again, I said many times, I want to repeat it again. To me, it's the best fiction that he wrote. If you're curious about Crowley, Crowley's writing can be harsh. Read Moonchild, because it's funny. There's a lot of understanding of what Crowley was thinking. Like, if you're curious about Thelema and what Crowley was, how Thelema worked for Crowley, it's a grimoire. There's a lot of practical spells in it. Like, it tells you how to do this, it tells you how to do that, it tells you how to use the tower of the tarot to kill your enemies, if that's something you want to do. It tells you how to do it, right? So the point
and he mocks his contemporaries like Arthur Rider-Waite.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, he mocks mercilessly everybody that he didn't like. And the point I'm making is that in Moonchild, he's in the book twice. He's in the book as the young, dashing adept, Cyril Gray, and as the old, wise master, which is known as Simon If. Now, why I'm telling you this, I'm getting to the point, is that, at some point, there's these two magicians, and their guests are being attacked by the Black Lodge, which is Arthur Waite, MacGregor Mothers, the Golden Dawn, right? And they send them like a larvae, like an astral entity. And Cyril Gray, which is still working on the on the I and Thou, like it still sees spirits for something external. He tries to banish. He tries to cast words and try to destroy the spirit. Nothing happens because the spirit is too strong. What happens, however, is Simon If, being the master, goes out and let the spirit attack him, because what he does, like he reintegrates the spirits, because there's nothing, right? Like the point that he makes is that there is no me, there is no spirit. Everything is the body of Nuit. So everything is part of existence. So there's no conflict either. So the spirit cannot do anything to me, and that's how they resolve it. And Moonchild is early, right? He doesn't write it too late in his career. So I think he goes into these phases, but at the end of the day, he reasserts non-dualism. Okay, I don't know if this answers your question. I tend to rumble a little bit, but I hope it did.
No, that's good. I need a quick ruling from the adjudicator here. Goetia or Goetia?
I say Goetia, Latin
Yeah.
style, like, but in the United States you say Goetia, they don't understand, so you have to say
Yeah.
Goetia.
Yeah, it's the same.
So in Latin is Goetia, and in Italian is
Goetia.
Goetia as well. One more thing I would like to say.
Surprisingly, it's the same.
I know, right? It's the same thing. One more thing I would like to say is that on this I and Thou psychological model, non-spirit model, one famous Thelemite, Lon Milo Duquette, which is one of the jewels of Thelema, is basically one of the few decent people in OTO. Let me say it every time, because he is. Famously, he wrote this book, I think it's in his book called Low Magic. He wrote this book where the tagline is, "It's all in your head, you just don't know how big your head is." And everybody I know, maybe nobody, no one's here, but let's say most people I know will say, wait, that's a proof of the psychological model. Even Milo Duquette says that. The point Lon is doing is completely opposite, is that since your head is so big, that transcends yourself, your persona, transcends, everything is part of your head, because your head is the head of God. This is the same concept of the Leela, the play between Shiva and Shakti. Everything is the play of Shiva and Shakti. So the only ontological existence is that of Shiva that experienced Shakti. But, most people just don't get that because I think it's difficult to wrap your mind around that. So, yeah.
I'll come back with some questions on Moonchild, but I'll let Stephen.
Thank you. Stephen.
Hi, Marco.
Hi there.
So, quick question. In the contemporary esoteric landscape, which organizations, movements, or individuals are at the forefront of advancing the practice and understanding of magic?
That's a good question. Okay. I don't really have faith in organizations anymore, because I've experienced them. I've experienced my organizations. I was originally was a member of. I've been a member of the AA since forever. That was the first thing I was initiated into. I'm still a member of AA, but that's really not an organization where you really get to meet other people. Some lineages have more of a lodge structure, not mine. I was a member of Drago Rouge for a brief 4 years, when I was young and a little stupid, and I'll leave it at that. And then I've been a member of OTO, and I'm a member, and I'm still a Freemason. Freemasonry is something I really don't discuss, because Freemasonry is really its own thing, right? Like, especially the way you do Freemasonry in the UK, it's in many ways it's so well organized. You know what you're getting, you know what you put in, you know when you get out. There's no expectation. It's very well rounded. So, and it's also there's very little spiritual endeavors in Freemasonry anymore, right? It has been secularized, but I think it's been secularized the right way. Now, the other big experience I had was with Ordo Empyreantis, and it's been one of the worst experiences of my life. I went on record multiple times to say that I wasted my 30s into that. I wasted 10 years of my life in I wish I could go back and do something completely different. And there's many reasons for that, but to answer your questions, because organizations in the magical landscape tend to become a cult of personality of the leader, and tend to become hierarchical, nepotistical. You just rub shoulders with the right people and you get advancement, etc., etc. And so, and there's all this idea that all the secrets, everything that you're there to actually learn, are gate kept by higher degrees, and you don't get there if you don't give favors, which could be favors of various kinds, from time to time also sexual. So organizations, I really don't believe in them, right? I would say that when it comes to individuals, I think that you have people like, some of the people that are more influential are member of the Temple of Set, but this is not an endorsement for the Temple of Set, because I'm not a member. I never cared about being a member. I don't know how the internal workings of the Temple of Set possibly are as bad as every other organization as I have experienced. But some of the people that came out of the Temple of Set, only one person, Don Webb, is a public figure. The others, their own names you don't know, so it's pointless. But I'm thinking of them as people that are really pushing the boundaries. I would say that my friend Peter Levenda has been there for the last 50 years and is still going strong, especially with his very public involvement with the disclosure movement in the United States, which is not just about ufology, and people might snicker at it. It's like, oh, it's crazy stuff for people, for conspiracy theories. I think that, if you get the Congress of the United States to actually discuss the fact that UFOs might be real and might not be nuts and bolts, might be actually, consciousness states, well, that's something that maybe Crowley would have done that, right? Crowley famously tried to do that multiple times, but was, ridiculed and, left behind because he was too crazy, right? Well, Peter Levenda is doing that, right? So I'm thinking of him. I'm also thinking of, I'm thinking of people that are not under the spotlight, because what I noticed is that the more you get under the spotlight, the less time you have to push the boundaries, right? There's a lot to be said about the Hermetic secret, the 4 powers of the Sphinx, the final one being, or some people say the first one being, to be silent. That silence is not just about, don't tell the secrets, because most of the secrets are there. We live in the year of an age of information. Most of the secrets have been published. The problem is that, you can read things and think you understood them unless you secrete them, unless you extract them from yourself. So unless you, in fact, do all the work needed to understand those secrets, you don't have anything. And again, the more you are under the spotlight, the less time you have to do that. So, in many ways, with the exception maybe of Don Webb, I'm thinking of, again, Peter Levenda, possibly, the other day I was here at Treadwell's in London to see, a lecture by Phil Hine. Phil Hine, again, has been there forever. Phil is a very difficult character, unless you understand him very well, and unless you understand him in person. He has a very, very unique British humor that does not translate. But again, I am lucky that I've known him directly, because we worked together when I was the manager of Treadwell's. He was writing copy for Treadwell's, so we had also a little bit of a business relationship, and so we understand better. I got to get him better. But long story short, I think he's doing a very good job in trying to give the wider public a better understanding of the left-hand path, what is, what isn't, especially with, as Andrea was saying before, with all the better understanding of Tantra that we have this day, because most people will know Phil Hine as a chaos magician. Phil stopped being a chaos magician 20 years ago, and he's been working with Tantra ever since, and that, I guess, that's more his thing. And so if you think about it, like, he's been doing more of that than anything else that is famous for. There are other names that exist in that liminal space. I hate to say liminal all the time, but I've been writing about liminal space today, so bear with me. So basically, that space that goes between, you know, straight up magic and more, I don't know, more like high strangeness. Joshua Cutchin, he wrote a lot of good books. And I think, again, I don't know him, but I really, really enjoyed his books. I really enjoyed every time he was speaking on podcasts. I think this guy is switched on. This guy understands. And that's about it, right? Like I say, I'm thinking about a good 10, 15 people, but again, it's names that you don't know, right? But then again, you might look at my friend, my Facebook friends. You might find someone interesting there, especially popping in the comments from time to time when I discuss magic. But again, they're not public people.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Why do chaos magicians and Thelemites hate each other? That's a provocative question.
I personally don't hate the chaos magicians. So, I mean, when I started working with magic, you know, I discovered Crowley. My famous origin story is that I discovered Crowley when I was 12 through a comic book, and it was like love at first sight, more or less. But the reality is that after that, I started reading, you know, Peter Carroll, Phil Hine, and I always thought that chaos magic was cool. And then I found Grant Morrison's and the Invisibles, which was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, right? Disinfo with Richard Metzger. I don't hate chaos magic at all. What I think is that chaos magicians, especially the new generations of chaos magicians, hate Thelema because it's too stuffy and too structured, especially the Thelema that became mainstream famous. And when I say mainstream, please, of course, you know, quote unquote, that is the Thelema of the OTO, the Thelema of people that tried very hard to turn the OTO into a mega church and failed. So becoming structured, stuffy, same rituals, no explorations, like following Crowley blind. Basically the polar opposite of what chaos magic is supposed to be. And the counterpoint, you know, chaos magicians, golden donors, Solomonic magicians, you know, they're all very structured in their praxis. And so, you know, the approach of like the freeform approach of chaos magic is seen as, you know, childish. I will say, I mean, chaos magic did give us eventually Witch Talk, which was the worst thing ever happened to humanity, I think, right? You know, the witches on TikTok, the mercification, the simplification of magic that you see nowadays does stem from chaos magic, and I guess that is you know, critique you can put at their doorstep. There's also another maybe darker aspect of this, is that a lot of chaos magic eventually went, you know, accelerationism, alt-right, Nick Land. I'm thinking, you know, the Dark Enlightenment. I'm thinking people with very nasty ties in politics, and a lot of people have nothing to do with them. At the same time, a lot of Thelemites went there as well. So maybe, I don't know, maybe those two love each other, but I certainly don't.
Yeah, I know it's complicated, and it doesn't necessarily seem like chaos magic and Thelema are incompatible, but it seems that there are many Thelemites that hate chaos magicians and vice versa. So
I mean, I think you got to remember also that chaos magic for the longest time, this was something Phil Hine told me directly, he was there. Like, chaos magic was called British Thelema at first, which is kind of ridiculous if you think about it, because, you know, Thelema was born in Britain, right? Like, I mean, Crowley was as British as it gets. But since the 80s and the, you know, the formation of what is OTO Incorporated, right? It is a corporation. It's that's what it is, made by Americans. They started to really, you know, put down very hard the lines of what it means to be a Thelemite. You had people in Britain, you know, those who were experimenting with chaos magic, but also people like the late Jake Stratton Kent, that was publishing the British Journal of Thelema and the New Equinox. Oh, Jim Lees, the people that were working on the New Eon Kabbalah, New Eon English Kabbalah, sorry. All those people were called like British Thelemites and chaos magicians because they just did not want to fall in line with Bill Breeze and the OTO in the United States. So there's also that dichotomy and that polarity that's not immediately evident for those who did not spend 10 years in the OTO. Please don't do that. I mean, it's absolutely pointless, but that's maybe one of the reasons why you have this ongoing hatred, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of the early chaos magicians were Thelemites, and were Thelemites that were just trying to do their own thing away from those structures. Those who were trying to be Crowley Thelemites. I don't know if it makes sense, but maybe one day
I think that
should.
historically chaos magic is comes from Thelema. I don't know how else to say.
I mean, absolutely, 100%.
Like it's so.
I mean, I would argue that Thelema itself is, the syncretic element of Thelema is chaotic, right? Like Crowley was pulling all the things he wanted and all that. I mean, he was a perennialist, of course. He did think that there was, an Ur philosophy at the beginning of it all that we could actually go back to. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he wanted, that he tried. But to do that, he was pulling all the strings, and that is as chaos magic as it gets, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, obviously.
Yeah. I think just a note on the political side of it. I think that I have a personal pet peeve when certain magical traditions are associated with specific political strands. And that is because you find in so many traditions and so many occultists that you will have certain strands and certain groups that might be alt-right or alt-left or have, some very strong political views, but I don't think that the fact that there is a subgroup of people within that tradition that follow a specific political path, that it makes the entire path or the entire tradition belonging to that specific political view. And in fact, I think that by associating the two, you're actually doing something that is deleterious, because you are pushing actually people towards that kind of political view by associating the entire tradition or an entire esoteric path to a subsection of individuals that have certain political views. So I think I just wanted to mention that.
You make a good point. However, I'll tell you very briefly what happened, in the audio for me. Like, it's going to be very brief. Like, there were three main reasons why I left. One I told you. Another one is that in 2017 we had Charlottesville, right? The Unite the Rally, right? You will remember what was a bit of a watershed in our collective understanding of how problematic is our politics and how polarized we are in the times we're living in. Some people at the very top of the OTO, James Wasserman, is passed, but he was 9 Degree, he was one of the leaders, etc., etc. He started to organize a faction inside the OTO, also tied to the AA, the lineage of the AA that they belong to. There are many lineages in the AA, complicated. And they were trying to make it political. They were trying to kick out all the libtards. They were trying to make it like he was actually going to Trump rallies. He actually was going to Roger Stone. He was trying to push Thelema as the MAGA religion. This is what's happening, right? And that's why we had a huge, massive break in the OTO, almost a schism, right? And that's why I left. So it's true what you say is that if you try to do these broad strokes, you will alienate people, and then maybe that's what happened, right? Because they were trying to do that. There was a big.
You let them win. I guess my point is that you let them win. Let's say there is a fringe of the OTO that wants to push alt-right agenda, and people start saying, "Oh, don't follow the OTO," or whatever it is. I'm just using the OTO as an example because it's alt-right. You are allowing that fringe to win and to take over the entire thing, the entire OTO. So that's why I think that it's just deleterious to associate an entire tradition or entire path to a subsection of people that follow one political view or another, because then you just let them win. And I just don't think that it's fair. And it's the same with so many traditions, even with Heavenry, for instance.
Oh
There are
yeah,
people who say,
absolutely.
oh, don't be a heathen because heathens are alt-right. Why should you allow heathenry to be completely subsumed with alt-right views just because there is a subsection of people that do that, when there are so many heathens that don't have those political views at all? It's just, it's not, it is really deleterious because you're really allowing them to win and to take over. So
I think I think in heathenry, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, there's not like a central, like a pope of heathenry, right? I mean, there are different, exactly, right? Like in the case of the OTO, in case of any hierarchical structure, there is a person. It's an autocracy. It's not a democracy, right? There's a person that decides, and if that person is politically aligned, you either fall in line or you're out, right? So anyway, I think you're right in what you say, but I think there's also the reality is that when it comes, for instance, with the OTO, and of course the OTO is not dilemma. It's just that most people identify dilemma with the OTO, all of dilemma with the OTO, and one of the so part of my work, part of the work of other people, is to finally make it clear that's not the case. And I think we've been very successful, right? This has been, what, 8 years now already? Jesus Christ, time flies. But I think we've been very successful in finally changing the perspective that the OTO is not just all of dilemma, right? But when it comes from the OTO, like, you have no say. And again, it's hard to understand if you're not being part of it. And it's also hard to understand if you're a member of OTO and you've never been to 5th degree and up, or even, KAW and up. It's very complicated. Like, there's a lot of degrees, but for instance, the first experience of the OTO, the degrees that go from Minerva even up to perfect initiate, so the man of earth triad, which can be 6 years of some people's life, it can be 12 years of some people's time. You never get to see what the OTO is really like, and you have no say in it. Like, you are literally seen, and this is in Crowley's foundational dogmas, Liber 194. You're seen as the slaves at the time of Menenius Agrippa. That's what you are, and that's what you sign up to be in the Minerval initiation. You sign up to be someone who relinquish their will. It's interesting, right? There's all the concept of inversions in Telema and mysteries of the averse. Makes sense. But you relinquish your will because you say, I want to become a cog in the machine so that eventually I can be the one who controls the machine. That's what the OTO is. Most people don't know. The problem is that while Crowley expected everybody to start as slave at the time of Menenius Agrippa, you can read this in Liber 104, and by the time you leave the man of earth triad, you become part of the administration body, the lover triad. You don't get to 5th degree and lover triad anymore. You have to be in with the leaders, and the leaders are politically aligned. So it's a bit problematic there.
yeah, I think in the case where you are part of an organization that has leaders, then I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I guess my point was more generally talking about traditions or esoteric paths that are associated with a political view, and I just don't find it to be right.
I agree with you when you say, like, all Thelemites are alt-right. Of course they're not, right? But Crowley was a fascist, was he? I mean, he had strange ideas, but was he? Not really. It's just that I think we're still learning how to live in very polarized times. I have seen a lot of advancement, so I'm positive. Like, you know me, I tend to be very negative about everything, but I'm actually positive about this. I think we've been doing a very good job. We're not there yet, but hopefully soon.
Andrew, do you have a question?
Yeah. Just to sort of change tack a bit, but Moonchild, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't read it. It sort of, I see the idea of the plot is to entice a soul to choose a specific womb in order to, to get that soul to be born and then change the world somehow. Did Crowley get that from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which talks about, if you can't sort of attain Buddhahood, then if you're going to be reborn, choose a place that knows the Dharma and all this sort of thing, so you've got a better chance next time.
I think that was definitely, the Bardo was definitely one of his sources for these ideas. Another big idea is, of course, the alchemical concept of the homunculus, right? Like the creation of a being, right? A physical being. In alchemy, you create it, by merging metals and merging, plants and whatnot, or you could do it, sexually, and so in fact, like literally bring a being, from gestation to birth, but attracting a specific soul into that. That is also why, for instance, the how do you say, the subtitle of Moonchild is the butterfly's net, because what the butterflies are souls, right? And you're trying to catch them, right, with the creation of the Moonchild, or the creation of the homunculus, the alchemical secrets of the homunculus. It's a big part of the sexual magical secrets of OTO. The 9th degree, which is generative sex magic, it's either the creation of the homunculus or the creation of powerful talismans, which are anointed with sexual fluids, right? But there's this generative part is very important of the 9th degree. The 11th degree, another degree that everybody speaks about because they read it somewhere, maybe Kenneth Anger, maybe Kenneth Grant. Is it gay sex? Is it sex on menstruation? It is non-generative sex, and it's prophetic in nature. So the 11th degree is used to have visions, to have connection, to have communication with other entities, possibly gods or God, whereby the 9th is specifically generative, and that's what Crowley like the big secret in plain sight in Moonchild is the 9th degree of OTO, right? So it's all about the creation of this system. But yeah, I have no doubts that Crowley, he was a big reader of anything Tibetan as it was available to him at the time. So I think there's absolutely no doubt that that's one of his sources, right? So yeah.
Great, thanks.
Andrea.
Yes. I wanted to go back to yoga and tantra and the integration of, especially the integration of tantra within Thelemic magic. And I was thinking about the fact that many tantric texts mention the importance of a master, a guru, and obviously the relationship between a tantric master and disciple is different from, I would say, a teacher and a pupil. It's not just about giving teachings, but it's also the presence, the energy of the master, which transforms the disciple. And I wondered if, in your opinion, this kind of relationship is compatible with the Thelemic system, the Thelemite system. Yeah.
So Crowley famously envisioned the AA, which was the magical mystical system, right, where he would teach magic, right, as a guru Kela relationship. Okay, like you would have a superior and a student, right? And this was not just to be, as you said, only somebody that checks your homework. It was also somebody that would actually be there for the student as a source, as a link to the initiatory chain, like as you call it, parampara, right, in Tantra. Well, I think that part is one of the most fundamental parts of the Thelemic system that are almost completely gone and overlooked in today's experience of Thelema, because the current holders, I mean, like, let's put it like this: the current schools of Thelema, the most visible, the ones you can easily join on the internet by sending an email and then meeting two people and signing a form, they have, they got that away, that Guru Kela relationship, for a more, a church vibe. Okay, that's, the OTO really wanted to rethink itself as a church, right? And so they try to almost eliminate completely every connection between a possibly a source of initiation, an egregoric source if you want, and a lineage of Guru Kela, so that you can actually have an unbroken chain of initiation. This is one of the biggest criticism that I also have of the OTO, because that is gone, right? Famously, Crowley wrote all the rituals of the OTO in the sense that you take your oath to an egregore, to Baphomet, right? That was supposed to be, and Baphomet is a very complex figure. I don't think we have time to go into this right now, but in general, the point was that Baphomet was a symbol that he was uniting both Thelemic ideas, especially the idea of annihilation of polarities, Babylon, and there was a little bit of Templar flavor with the idea that Baphomet was the idol of the Templars. But long story short, that Baphomet is not just a name, was not just the name of Crowley's Grandmaster of OTO. It was an egregore, right? It is an egregore. It's something that's there in the spirit of war, right? And something that actually can act and does act as source of initiation. The current people that run OTO changed that, so you take your oaths to people. You, for instance, like if you're in this country, in the UK, your oaths are not to the Grandmaster Baphomet, your oaths are to the Grandmaster Hyperion, that is John Bonner, living in Hastings. It's a man, right? If you do it somewhere else, you take your oaths to Bill Breeze, etc., etc. Because they were trying to remove that Guru Kela fundamental focus, and they were trying to, and in fact, the focus on the initiatory chain, they were trying to just make it almost like an open door church where everybody can enter and everybody can have a glimpse of the mysteries through the performance of the Gnostic Mass, which Crowley did intend to be a ritual for the public, right, for the congregation, but it was only meant to be, the most entry level of entry levels. And that's all that there is left there, because that chain of initiation is broken and gone, and that Kurugela relationship is over and gone. But I think it's fundamental, and in fact, this is something that I have been restoring with my in EGC and with my own personal students. So yeah.
But there is something which is unclear. So do you think that this initiatory chain needs a human incarnated being or not? Because you mentioned the egregore aspect.
I think there needs to be a human representative of this incarnation, right? There's a physical aspect of this transmission that cannot be done just in the astral, right? I do believe that there's, especially when it comes to Thelema, there's an emphasis on touch, there's an emphasis on physicality, might be an emphasis on fluids as well. And without those very, very physical elements, you do not get the transmission. So you can quote me on that. Lots of people will disagree with me, but that's where I stand.
Okay, then maybe a personal question. You can choose to not answer it. So I suppose that you were also initiated by another person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So my initiations in the AA were done always by in the AA there are two physical initiations: the initiation of neophyte, the initiation of zelator, and every other initiation is meant to be done. Basically, it's your work with the Holy Guardian Angel. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Gnostic Church, that was done person by person by person. Okay. So that was done by physical people. Okay. My consecration in the episcopacy was done by Michael Berthiaud in Chicago in 2006. So there was a lay of hands, there was a word said, there was an element of eating and drinking, and it was physical. It was not just like somebody sent me like a drop on the astral and everything is going to be done there. I know that's something that happens in other traditions. I do not dispute their validity or not. I have no experience of that. I know that, from my perspective, the way I understand my tradition, it has to be done physically. There needs to be that.
Yes. So the initiation that you received was I would say a ritualized form of
So I received plenty of
over
initiations at different stages of my life. In the initiations in the EAA, again, 2 physical. The other ones are personal because it's a work with a Holy Guardian Angel. The initiations.
Sorry, I cannot hear Marco anymore.
No, Marco, you're breaking up.
We lost him.
Yeah, he froze. I think he's gone.
The egregor is preventing him from revealing the secrets.
Yeah,
That's right.
yes.
The initiatory chain.
Oh,
He's back.
here he is.
And here he is. Yeah.
All right,
Welcome back.
Thank you. Something happened. I don't know what. So I was saying that I don't know where you lost me, but I said that AA, 2 physical, rest not physical because it's personal. It's a work of personal gnosis. OTO, they're all physical, all of them, even if I think they really do not matter. If you ask me, were you ever a member of the OTO? I was a member of Reconstruction. Everybody who's ever been initiated into the OTO from since the death of Karl Germer, they're all members of Reconstruction, the cosplay, nothing else. Well done, cosplay, from time to time, but that's it. When it comes to the Ecclesia Gnostica, I received priesthood and bishophood, episcopacy, by ritual means. So physical, in-person ritual means.
Yes, I understand this ritual component. When I was thinking about the tantric master-disciple relationship, I was thinking about the surrender of one's will to his or her master. And previously you mentioned this inversion of concepts in Telema, like surrendering one's will to discover your own true will. So I was wondering, if that would be compatible with
So the guru worship that you find in Eastern religions, it's not present in the AA. I would say that for me, I don't think there is space for that in Telema. Okay, so in that sense, I don't think there's space for that. However, in the OTO, you are when you go into the mineral initiation, you are presented with something called the first paradox of philosophy. So it's basically it's a charge, it's a lecture, and tells you that in the man of earth triad, which is a triad, but in fact it's 6 initiations because each degree has a subdegree. In the man of earth triad, you surrender your own will to the will of the group because the group knows best. That's the gist of it, right? There is no guru worship in there. So it's not like they tell you, well, this person that initiates you, it's your guru now, and you need to, bring him gifts and see whatever he says or she says, you must follow. There's not that, okay? That is not present. I would argue, though, that in that kind of guru worship, it's found, it's in Telema by plenty of Telemites to Crowley himself. Like you would find to these days people that live and breathe by whatever they think Crowley would do in their shoes, right? So if you ask me, so is there like a precise type of guru worship in Telema? There isn't, but there's a lot of people that live their Telemites life like if there was there, right? I don't know if I answered. It's a bit.
No. You answered. Well, I would not qualify the master-disciple relationship in Telema as a worship to the guru. I think it's more functional to reach certain states, and then once you have reached them, you can you become yourself a master, so you don't need a master anymore. But I was wondering, what do you make of certain tantric texts where it is explicitly said that certain states can be reached only through the master-disciple relationship? Since you integrate some of the tantric concepts and techniques into your magical system, what do you think about that? For instance, I'm thinking about the Natha Yoga tradition, where without the guru, certain states of Kundalini awakening cannot be reached.
So this does not exist in Telema as per Crowley's writings. Okay, I think my personal experience, right? As a, maybe you want to say like as an heretic Theramite or a, you know, Theramite that went his own path. I think there's some truth in that. I do think that there are some states, there are some practices that you cannot unlock on your own. You must have someone who's went through the path before and can guide you precisely and can, you know, help you avoid the pitfalls and whatnot. The big problem that, you know, that I see in this, or I don't know if it's a problem, maybe like the conundrum that I see in this, is that, you know, this is why I was speaking about guru worship, is because, you know, that relationship usually goes along with guru worship in India, as much as I understand, right? So, you know, you decide that you really give your all to this person that you recognize as a, you know, an embodied representation of Shakti, or, you know, the divine, so that because they can help you do that. And maybe if they tell you, you know, jump, and you ask how high, right? I don't think there's space for that in Telema, and I've never been exposed to that. But have I been exposed to, I've been helped to understand certain things and certain practices only by the aid of a specific, you know, teacher or master or guru? Yes. Do I do this with students? Yes. And that's also why I almost don't take students, right? Because you know, everything I do online, as it's not my magical practice. You know, it's more like a divulgation effort. Like what, you know, my real magic is done elsewhere, and it's not published, it's not discussed, and it's for very few people, in fact, because, you know, you have to have a sort of very deep trust with this person that you decide to teach, and this person has to have a very deep trust in you. So yeah.
And commitment, I would imagine.
Sorry?
And commitment, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I find that commitment is not always a given with
Oh no,
of course,
absolutely.
practitioners, because they might say, "Oh yes, I want to do it," and then
shiny, and then they disappear after
yes,
a month. Yeah.
exactly.
I do not teach real magic to anybody that I don't know personally for over a year, and that I would not invite in my house. You know, it's something you find very like in Wicca, like you give initiation only to people that you've known from a year and a day. And in Freemasonry also, you know, before initiating anybody, you have to write something where you say, would you invite this person to your house for dinner? Yes. And if you say no, people that process initiation forms will say, well, then you should not initiate this person. I really believe into that, possibly because I've seen audio again. Getting into audio is super simple, and you always ended up with 3-4 people in the lodge that were very committed. We were there, you know, at the crack of dawn to build the temple, and then everybody would come up, half-ass the ritual, and leave, and we would have to tear down the temple and rinse and repeat forever. So no, I think that you need to find those who are really committed, and you need to find the good match. You might find people that are really committed, but you're not a match for them, right? Like you just don't jive with each other, right? And it's a long process. You have to vet, you have to vet the candidate, but the candidate has to vet you as well. What I try to do is that if it's been a couple of situations where, you know, people are committed, and at the same time, I realized that we were not a good match, and then I suggested them that they contacted someone else, and that worked very well for them. So it's a long process, right? It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be simple. It's not meant to be easily digested either. You have to be there, and you have to be really, really, really sure that you want to do that. So
Chester is asking, if one achieves a supernal relationship with their holy guardian angel, cannot this holy guardian angel be that guru?
I think that the holy guardian angel, which I understand it as the Godhead, right? For me, the holy guardian angel, the HGA, is a name for God. It's not, you know, a spirit, whatever. It's the highest possible point of contact that we can have with what we understand as God. So yes, that the early archangel is the final guru, is the final teacher, is the final master, right? When we were saying that there's some certain practices, certain techniques that can only be, taught and transmitted personally, those practices are not necessarily needed to reach that final level, that final guru, right? Like, and I'm thinking about sexual practices, I'm thinking about internal alchemy practices, I'm thinking about, again, I'm talking about from a Thelemic perspective, not a tantric perspective, also because I'm not a tantric initiate, I'm a Thelemic initiate. So you really don't need, for instance, to do sex magic to get there, right? But do you need a guru to understand certain aspects of sex magic? Yes, absolutely. Is sex magic is sex just like as chaos magic would see it, is sex just like a way to generate energy, and is sex just a way to to engage deeply and more emotionally involved with practice? Part is that, but there's also a series of techniques that have to do with the production of fluid, the mingling of fluid, that can only be taught to you directly by someone else. And do you need that? No, right? Are those practices fundamental to Telema per se? Yes. So do you need Telema to realize your higher self? No, right? Telema is a path, right? Like, so I hope you can see how these things can how these things all relate to each other.
Andrea.
Okay. So Martin Folks, a British practitioner who specializes in the teachings of...
Very good friend of mine. I know him very well.
Oh, okay. Nice. So you know that he met, I think, the son or the grandson of Franz Bardon, and he has published this letter that Franz Bardon sent to Aleister Crowley, asking to receive some copies of his, I think, Magic and another book. I can't recall which one was it, but he wanted to translate them, basically. Do you know of any other evidence of a correspondence between Franz Bardon and Crowley, and did they have any type of relationship or correspondence?
I don't. I know about this because of Martin, of course. And Martin, of course, is a Bardon. Martin is a Freemason. That's why we met. We know each other. We see each other in lodge very often. We're not member of the same lodge, but when you go to Covent Garden, the big Freemason soul, you get to see people all the time. And when I was at Redwell's, he is also the director, I think the owner now, of Louis Masonic. So I was stocking his books. We go way back. He's a big Bardonist. I'm not, right? So I was very surprised when he found that letter, because up until that point, the discussion about, like, did Crowley and Bardon ever know each other was raging, and it still rages to this day. I have no evidence that Crowley never really speaks of this, right? But it's also true that there's a lot of material, diaries and even other things that have never been given to the public by the current holders of the Crowley estate, which is the OTL. And I can tell you why. Most of it's because there are a lot of very unsavory political commentary by Crowley in it, and I think that will never see the light of day. But there might be something else. So there might be some connection that maybe will surface at some point. But no, besides that, I don't know really. Also, if you think about it, Bardon's system is very unique, right? So for me, it was kind of surprising that he wanted to read what Crowley was doing, because in many ways, Bardon's system is more advanced, is more refined than Crowley's system as it was happening at the time, right? I think over the course of the last 70 years and more, there's been some refinement there. But Bardon's system is one of the ties that you have with Kerning. It's one of the ties you have with Alois Mailander, which could be the secret Rosicrucians, behind the Theosophical Society, etc., etc. So there might be some interesting connection there, but again, as it stands, that's the only evidence we have, which is interesting, right? Like, so I hope more will come out to the light, because it might be that we will have to rethink either one system or the other completely.
Thank you. Sean.
Hi. So yeah, I was curious. I think one of the founding kind of religious ideas that Crowley incorporated into Thelema in the beginning was like Egyptian magic and astrology. And I was wondering how much of that, you still like survives in Thelema today, as far as like and is it mostly just like the Hellenic type of Egyptian magic and astrology, or do they do like the early kingdom type?
So I had Thelemites literally writing blogs against me for saying what I'm gonna say right now, is that there's almost no, Thelema is not Egyptian at all. Thelema has an Egyptian mask on top. That's why, as we were saying with Angela before, it's very chaos magic in this, right? There's almost no Hellenic or even more ancient Heka in Thelema at all. In fact, everything you find nowadays, you have a couple of authors, Mog Morgan, you have Oliver St. John. There are Thelemites, even long-standing Thelemites, that are trying to re-Egyptianize Thelema, and they're trying to find connections in this or that ritual. You have the people behind the OTO sanction AA, so you have J. Daniel Gunther and that AA that rewrote a lot of AA rituals to make them more Egyptian, right? But Crowley only used an Egyptian garb, going along with the Egyptiana of the Victorian age, where it was a child in the Victorian times, but the Edwardians were still very in love with everything Egyptian. And he just gave it like this garb, possibly because he received the Book of the Law in Cairo, and possibly because the idea of Egypt still to this day gives us an idea of magic and ancient wisdom, right? Thelema has a lot more to do with, again, I think with Hinduism, with Tantra, with non-dual Tantra especially. It has a lot more to do with Christianity, with esoteric Christianity. The OTO rituals are heavily Christian. Most people don't know, because most people don't get there. But it's basically like the Golden Dawn was. It's esoteric Christianity with a Thelemic slant, so all about changing the status quo, what we call the mysteries of the averse, the focus on the end times of Christianity, so Revelation, because the end of Christianity is the beginning of Thelema. But besides that, you have, of course, the names. You have Nuit, Hadith. Hadith is not Egyptian; it's Behudi, right? So that was a bad translation of the glyph, of the hieroglyph. Rauhakuit, I mean, really, it's Raurakti, right? So who is Rauhakuit? Oh, Rauhakuit is Ra and Hur sees as the coup. Yeah, Crowley was very good at making what they call mythopoiesis. That's why I also insist that magic's much more of an art form than it's a science form. Even than a religion, because it's about taking symbols and artistically give them life. Long story short, to answer your question, there's almost no Egyptian magic. There's the only thing that really survives possibly is from the PGM, right? You have the Bornos one, Crowley called it the Bornos one ritual. Of course, it's called the headless one, the Akephalos. That is the only thing that kind of survives. But once again, when we look at Crowley's exegesis of the headless one, he goes to try and explain all those barbarous names by Kabbalistic interpretations. That makes no sense. It's just him really trying extra hard to shoehorn ideas into a ritual. Again, possibly Crowley was the first chaos magician. I mean, Liber Samek is a textbook about that. I really think that Thelemites would be really should start to understand that Thelema, it's its own thing. It's when we finally realize that it doesn't matter that it doesn't have ancient roots. It doesn't matter that Crowley really tried to prove these ancient roots, but as a Freemason, he was taking the the leaf from Freemasonry itself and creating a traditional history, something that really doesn't exist. It's just made up, to be very blunt, but somehow artistically, again, you can use it as a myth, and you can weave this myth to see if you can actually create magical practices that give result. Crowley, again, in the introduction of Liber O, which was his first attempt at a handbook of magic, he famously said, and I'm quoting non-verbatim, that in this book, it is written of sephiroths, of paths, of gods, all things. It doesn't matter if these things are true or not. What matters is that if you do certain things, certain results will follow. And that students are earnestly suggested not to attribute any scientific or philosophical validity to any of them. Crowley told us that he was a chaos magician. It's there, it's in Liber O. And this is Thelema, okay? A lot of people, when faced with this, it's like, oh, but then there's nothing to Thelema. It's all made up. It might well be made up, but it works. If you do the work, the practices of Thelema, you get the results that the practices tell you you will get out of it. And that's what matters to me. Again, this is like, if you get to read my book, that's like, I spend chapters on, on this. And honestly, that's all I care. Because again, when you look at especially with all the scholarship we have right now, there's no way you can think that Crowley's understanding of, the PGM and the headless rite was right. He was making shit up because he wanted, oh, to mean, oh, Satan, oh, Son, oh, Lord. Like, he wanted to say that because he was making a point. We know nowadays that, the barbarous names in the PGM, we might have had meanings, might have not. We maybe one day, with more evidence coming up, we'll find what those meanings, what those words, those barbarous names meant. But what it interests to me as a Thelemite is that if you do Liber Samek, you get a result, and that's all that Thelema is. It's a very result-driven system. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. So, Andrea, you can have the
Yes,
last
thank you.
question, and then we
Yes,
wrap
yes.
up.
I have a follow-up question on what Marco just said. So if I cannot see, yeah. So if Thelema is a system, a made-up system, and I understood that you claim to have achieved a certain mastery of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go beyond that, like either by exploring other systems or by creating a more refined version of it, or why did you choose to remain within the system of Thelema?
I'm not choosing to remain that. It's just that so far I haven't published anything about it. I haven't published about anything about, my ideas of what should come next, right? Like some years ago, at the height of the pandemic and at the height of where everybody was very, very, very engaged with magic on social media, which if you say like this, seems like a very good thing. It was very bad because everybody had an opinion on everything. I wrote something called the Post-Thelemic Manifesto. And that was it's really like a little statement of intent. And the statement of intent, it really is about, it's time for Thelemites to move beyond Crowley. Doesn't mean like ignoring Crowley. It means just like leaving behind, like removing from the spotlight, and put on the spotlight new ideas. These ideas will surface in time. These ideas take time to test them, right? Remember, we were saying at the beginning, like the method of science to the best of our abilities. If we're trying to apply the method of science to something that I believe it's an art, more than a science, it takes time. And I'm gonna be very, very blunt once again, because that's who I am. It's so much easier to get a publisher to pay you to write about Crowley than to write about your own ideas. So you need to write about Crowley a couple of times, make them 50, 60 grand, and then maybe they will give you the spotlight to do your own ideas on Telema. And that's my plan. So
yeah, but I understand that. It totally makes sense. One very last question, Angela. I'm curious to understand, because what you are describing remains in the sphere of Telema in some sort. Like it's not being a Telemite as is currently understood, but it's more like thinking in post-Telemic terms. You were saying, but I'm curious to understand why you have not considered, or maybe you have, of going into a completely different system, like of exploring a completely different system. Let's say, I don't know, Franz Bardon magical system, or I don't know, a different tradition, completely different. I'm trying to understand, because you are very critical also of Telema and the OTO, and to a certain extent also of Crowley. So I'm curious to understand why you remain within that sphere of esoteric or occult thought and practice.
So is the question, what is it about Telema that you're still holding on to?
yeah,
What
good
is it?
point.
What is it?
It's
What
a-
is it that is so precious to you about
Yeah,
Telema?
it's a very good point. I have explored other systems. I explored the Bardon system, not in detail, but I explored it. I explored the Michael Berthiaud system, which is very vast, and I explored it in detail. I worked with Michael for years and years. I explored Zivorad's Levinsky system. I was one of the first people facilitating Zivorad's work in Italy. I know that you guys at RENSEP just did something on Zivorad. I know him personally. I knew him personally. He died a few years ago. And 20 years ago, we were doing the PEAT in Italy together. So I explored it at length. Explored the Dragon Rouge. So what keeps me into Telema? It's the holy books of Telema. It's the liberal Bill Edges and the holy books of Telema. There's some sort of, I do think that there is some sort of enlightenment there and true gnosis that I have never found anywhere else. So I think that it's paramount for me to try and I don't want to say repackage is such a loaded term. It's paramount for me to not throw those elements away, because I think there's still things that we need to be dissected, and there's still gnosis to be extracted from that. And I do think those are the tantras of the new eon, right? So the problem, for instance, in the Bardon system, as much as I know, there's no religious text. There's no received text, right? With Michael Berthiaud, there's the concept of Zoteria and the Maon, but again, there's no received text that you can actually. It's very different. It's more about transmission with the other, right? Whereby I do think that Telema, Crowley, I do think that he was a prophet. He did receive something that is groundbreaking. I just really don't like everything he's done around it. And I think that his legacy has been tainted by the people that came after him. But those texts are fundamental still. And so that's why I haven't, even if I explored other systems, I'm back to Telema, and I will die with Telema, I suppose. I don't know. Maybe I think so.
That's very dramatic. Thank you, Marco.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess that we can wrap up here. Thank you so much, Marco, for illuminating
much.
us about Telema and your also your interpretation of Telema. We definitely look forward to more books about your own take on esotericism as well in the future.
Oh, trust me, the ones coming up next on the Holy Guardian Angel is going to have a lot of people happy. So, for all the good and bad reasons. Yeah.
And thank you all of you guys for coming. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going on the RENSEP platform. The recording will be also on the RENSEP platform. And I will see you again next month for an Ask a Scholar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.